Why do men and women seem to speak completely different languages? And how can understanding those differences bring harmony to our relationships? In Chapter 7, The Purpose and Power of Love and Marriage, Dr. Myles Munroe dives deep into the unique ways men and women think, feel, and communicate. Today, we'll uncover these differences and celebrate the beauty of God's intentional design. Hello, sunshine, and all my gentle men and gentle ladies. Welcome back to the Get Married Whole podcast, embracing wholeness and love and life. I'm your host, Queen Rakihealya, and I cannot wait to share the treasures I've discovered in Chapter 7, Vive La Difference. But first, let's take a moment to invite the Holy Spirit to lead this conversation. If your hands are free, place them over your heart and join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for your perfect design in creating men and women. Teach us to honor and value the unique differences you've placed within us. Help us to grow in understanding, compassion, and love. Bless this time of learning and reflection. In Jesus' name, amen. Now let's dive into some incredible insights from this chapter that will forever change how you see and celebrate the differences between men and women. Chapter 7, Viva La Difference. Let's face it, men and women are different. There is no doubt about it. Although the obvious physical differences have been noted and appreciated from the very beginning, it is only in the last generation or so that the essential psychological and emotional differences between men and women have been identified and confirmed scientifically. The male and female of the human species are wired differently. They do not speak, think, or act the same way in response to the same stimuli. Men and women send, receive, and process information differently. Because they view the world through different mental and emotional filters, men and women can look at the same thing and see completely different aspects. They can be exposed to the same information and draw totally dissimilar conclusions. They can examine the same data and yet be poles apart in how they interpret that data. Needless to say, this fundamental difference in the way men and women think and act lies at the heart of much of the conflict, confusion, and misunderstanding that has occurred between the sexes for centuries. Communication problems between men and women are so commonplace as to be proverbial. Does this sound familiar? I just don't understand him or her. Whenever we try to talk, it's as though we are on different wavelengths. Have you ever heard anyone say, "Isn't that just like a woman?" Or, "He's acting just like a man"? As with anything else, knowledge can banish confusion where male-female relationships are concerned. Understanding not only that men and women are different, but also how they are different is vital to improving male-female communication and relationships at every level. This knowledge is particularly critical for young couples who want to ensure that their marriage has the greatest chances of success and happiness. In the beginning, God created man as a spirit and placed that spirit in two flesh and blood houses, male and female. This joining of the male and female houses is the only God-ordained method for producing new houses. The basic purpose of male and female houses is to produce new houses. A spirit has no gender. Whether man or woman, all members of the human race have the same spirit, the same essence. Males and females, however, have biological and psychological differences according to God's design. He made the male house different from the female house because they have different functions. The male is wired for logic. The female, on the other hand, is wired for emotional response. Males and females have different chemical and hormonal balances which cause them to think and behave differently. Because God intended for the male to be the head of the family unit, He endowed him chemically and hormonally for logical thinking. The male is wired for logic. The female, on the other hand, is wired for emotional response. Her body's chemical and hormonal balance sets her up to operate from a feeling-based center. Because both genders have both male and female hormones, logical males have an emotional side and emotional females have a logical side. In general, however, male and females view the world according to how they are wired. Males from a logical center and females from an emotional center. 15 essential differences between men and women. Many husbands and wives suffer needlessly from confusion, misunderstanding, and hurt feelings simply because they do not understand each other's fundamental differences. Let's consider 15 specific ways that men and women differ, all of which can have a profound effect on how they relate to each other, particularly in the context of marriage. These 15 statements are not intended to lump all men and women indiscriminately into one group or the other. There are always exceptions to every rule, but they are generally true of most men and women with regard to their psychological and emotional makeup. Number 1. A man is a logical thinker while a woman is an emotional feeler. To be logical means to think in a reasoned, organized, and orderly manner. A logical thinker has an analytic mind that works like a computer, processing and evaluating information in a precise and predictable pattern. If 1 plus 1 equals 2, then 2 cut in half is 2 ones. That's logic. In general, that's the way men think. They look for the facts and act accordingly. Women are emotional. They approach issues more from feelings than from reason. This is not a bad thing. Being emotionally centered is neither better nor worse than being logical. It is just different. Another way of looking at it is to say that a man leads with his mind while a woman leads with her heart. While logic and emotion might seem incompatible on the surface, in reality, they complement each other very well. What kind of world would this be if everyone was exclusively logical? Life would be rather empty, with no spirit, no passion, no fire, and little or no art. At the same time, emotion without logic would result in life without order. Both logic and emotion are necessary, not only for fulfillment, but for survival. This reveals the brilliance of God's design. A man leads with his mind, while a woman leads with her heart. Here's an example. John and Sarah are standing in their living room, and John notices that an armchair is blocking easy access to the air conditioner. He says, "That chair is in the way. We need to move it." He is thinking logically. At the same time, Sarah is thinking how nicely the chair offsets the couch and the curtains, and how beautiful a vase of flowers would look on the end table next to it. She is thinking emotionally. Neither viewpoint is right or wrong, or better or worse than the other one. They are just different. If John and Sarah understand that they view the same situation in two different ways, they can reach a common consensus. In general, men are logical and women are emotional. Number 2, for a woman, language spoken is an expression of what she is feeling. For a man, language spoken is an expression of what he is thinking. A woman says what is on her heart, while a man says what is on his mind. This is another expression of the emotion-logic dichotomy between the ways women and men think. Women are emotional feelers, and their spoken words need to be understood from that frame of reference. Men are logical, and their words often do not adequately express their true feelings. Both may have similar thoughts or feelings, but will express them in different ways. Unless they understand this difference, a married couple will experience communication problems. A woman says what is on her heart, while a man says what is on his mind. Let's suppose that John has promised to pick up Sarah at 5 o'clock, right after work. John is running late, and the later he gets, the more steamed Sarah becomes. She is pacing and sweating and fuming and rehearsing in her mind the speech she will give John when she sees him. John finally pulls up at 6 o'clock. Giving Sarah a sheepish grin, he says, "Hi, I'm sorry I'm late." John really means it. He is sorry he's late. He's telling Sarah what he's thinking. He may have trouble showing how sorry he is, but at least he thought enough to apologize. Ignoring John's words, Sarah slides into the passenger seat, slams the door, and sits right up next to it, as far away from John as possible. She says nothing as John drives off. After several minutes of complete silence, John asks, "What's wrong?" As far as he's concerned, the matter is finished. He was late. He apologized. End of story. Everybody has a right to be late once in a while. That's his logical thinking at work. "Nothing's wrong," Sarah snaps. After several more minutes of silence, John tries again. "Why don't we go out for dinner? I'll take you to a really nice place." "No, I don't want to go out." Pulling up to a florist, John makes another attempt. "I just want to run in here and get some flowers." "For who?" "If you love me that much, you'd have been there at 5 o'clock like you said you would." Through all of this, John should not listen to what Sarah is saying as much as listen to how she is feeling. Sometimes when a person tries to tell how he or she feels, the words don't come out right. Logical John needs to understand emotional Sarah. At the same time, Sarah needs to realize that John has already said what was on his mind. They both have a responsibility to understand what lies beyond spoken words and minister to each other. Number 3, language that is heard by a woman is an emotional experience. Language that is heard by a man is the receiving of information. When a woman speaks, although she may be expressing what she feels, a man will usually hear it as information, often on an impersonal level. When a man speaks, even if he is simply saying what's on his mind, a woman will usually receive his words at a much deeper personal and emotional level. It is easy to see how conflict could develop because of this. John offers to take Sarah out for dinner, but she says, "No, I don't want to go out." John hears that as information. Okay, she doesn't want to go out. The problem is that Sarah is saying what she is feeling, not what she is thinking. Sarah is thinking, "I'm so mad at you. You kept me waiting for an hour, and now you have the nerve to suggest we go out to dinner as though nothing happened? Not so fast, mister." Hearing is not the same as understanding. What one person says may not be what the other person hears. Because John receives spoken language as information, he has completely missed the deeper level of He has completely missed the deeper level of where Sarah is emotionally. She, on the other hand, interprets his words as shallow, uncaring, and inadequate. Both are sincerely trying to communicate, but are not connecting because they do not understand each other's frame of reference. Hearing is not the same as understanding. What one person says may not be what the other person hears. That is why communication is such an art. Husbands need to remember that every word they say will be received by their wives as an emotional experience. Wives need to keep in mind that every word they say will be received by their husbands as information. In order to understand each other better, husbands and wives both should learn to think in terms of how the other receives and interprets their words and speak accordingly. Number 4, women tend to take everything personally. Men tend to take everything impersonally. This difference is directly related to the way men and women are wired. Men are logical thinkers and women are emotional feelers. A woman interprets everything from an emotional perspective while a man is looking for information. John may remark to Sarah, "Honey, I don't like the way your hair looks today." He is imparting information, and even though he includes the qualifier today, Sarah doesn't hear that. All she hears is, "I don't like the way your hair looks." What John offered as information, Sarah interprets emotionally and becomes angry and hurt. As a result, she may rush off to the hairdresser and get a new cut or a new style. And all the while, John is wondering why she is making such a big deal of the whole thing. It is because she took it personally. Sarah may say to John, "Those pants don't look good on you. They are not hanging right." John's response may be, "Okay, no big deal. I'll change it tomorrow when I change clothes. He has received her criticism as information and has filed it away in his mind like a computer. He may take action in response to her comment, but he doesn't take it personally. Because women tend to take everything personally, men need to learn to be careful what they say to women and how they say it. A woman will remember an irritating action or an offhand comment for years. On the other hand, because men take things in personally, women must be careful in how they interpret men's responses to what they say. Just because a man does not react emotionally in the same way as a woman does not mean that he has no feelings or that he does not care. He is looking for information and trying to determine an appropriate way to respond. Number 5, women are interested in the details, the nitty-gritty. Men are interested in the principle, the abstract or philosophy. Sarah asks John, "How was your day?" He answers, "Fine." That's not the kind of answer Sarah was looking for. She wants to hear the step-by-step, moment-by-moment details of John's day. She isn't trying to pry. That's just the way she thinks. John's simple response reflects the way he thinks. "I had a good day. It was great." Now let's move on to something else. He is focusing on the principle. He had a good day, not on the nitty-gritty details. "I did this and that and thus and so." Suppose John invites another couple to come over for dinner. He is focusing on the principle that he wants to be hospitable to his friends. As soon as he tells Sarah, she immediately looks at all the details. What will we fix for dinner? What dishes should we use? How should we set the table? What about the rag carpet in the living room? The drapes are dirty. Can we get them clean? What about the spots on the wall? All John is thinking about is hosting their friends for a fun evening. He isn't thinking about the drapes or the dirty wall or the rag carpet or the dishes. A simple principle for him may be an ordeal of details for Sarah. Leaders need to think in principles and concepts, not the nitty-gritty details. Managers and company presidents don't have time to focus on the details. Their responsibility is to consider the principles, the philosophy of where the company is going, and to determine goals. A leader sets the vision and direction, and those under the leader work out the details to accomplish the vision. Under God's design for the home, the husband sets the vision and direction, the principles. That is his gift and role. The wife is gifted to know how to bring the vision to fruition, the details. Together, it is a powerful combination. Number 6. In material things, women tend to look at goals only. Men want to know the details of how to get there. Sarah dreams of all the things she would like to have for herself and her family. Some new jewelry, a new refrigerator, a new car, a new house. While John may have the same dreams and desires, he may not voice them as plainly because in his logical and analytical way of thinking, he focuses on the practical aspects and challenges of those dreams. How are we going to do this? Where are we going to get the money? Will our budget allow for a new refrigerator right now? Do we have the means to buy a new car? It's easy to see how this could create conflict and misunderstanding in a marriage. Sarah gets upset and angry because John does not seem to share her dream with the same level of enthusiasm as she has. In her opinion, he is dragging his feet as if he does not really care whether or not they realize their dreams. At the same time, John is frustrated with Sarah because she does not seem to understand the financial realities. What is it with this woman? Does she think money grows on trees? It's not that John doesn't share what Sarah's dreams. He is concerned with the practical nuts and bolts details of how to make those dreams come true. In material things, women focus on the what and men focus on the how. In material things, women are concerned with goals and men are concerned with getting there. To state it another way, women focus on the what and men focus on the how. Number 7. In spiritual or intangible things, men look at goals. Women want to know how to get there. In the spiritual realm, men focus on the goal, while women want to know the details. Once again, this difference between men and women is part of God's design. Spiritually, the husband is supposed to be the head of the home and therefore needs to know the direction, the goals, and the objectives for the spiritual growth and development of the family. The wife is interested in the details, the specific of how they are going to reach their spiritual goals. This is the exact opposite of the material realm. In this case, men focus on the what and women focus on the how. John tells Sarah that their goal as a family is to grow close to the Lord. That is the vision, the principle. When Sarah asks how, John proposes before work and an hour of Bible study together every evening. That is a good plan and bears fruit as long as they follow it. If John reaches a point where he does not follow through, Sarah will become frustrated. In spiritual things, men focus on the what and women focus on the how. Failure of men to take and maintain the spiritual lead in their home and marriage is one of the biggest problems in family today. Countless wives have been forced by default to assume the spiritual leadership in their homes because their husbands either will not or cannot carry out the role. This is not as it should be. Wives can be of great value in helping plan the specifics for reaching marriage and family spiritual goals, but the husband should be the visionary, the one who determines the direction and sets the pace. Number 8, a man's mind is like a filing cabinet. A woman's mind is like a computer. Show a man a problem or task that needs to be done, and he will take the information, file it away in his mind, close the door, and deal with it when he can. In the meantime, he continues with other things. A woman will identify a problem or a task and, like a computer that is running all the time, not relax until the problem is dealt with or the task completed. Sarah comes to John and says, "The bathroom walls need to be painted." John answers, "Okay," and files the information away. He doesn't forget about it, but is waiting until a better or more appropriate time to do it. As far as John is concerned, the matter is at rest. Sarah identified the task, passed it on to John, and he has processed the information. He will do it. 2 days go by. Sarah asks, "The bathroom walls still haven't been painted." Her mind will not rest on this subject until the job is done. John, however, is a little annoyed by her reminder. I know, I haven't forgotten. I'll do it. Just give me some time. A wife should be sensitive to her husband's filing cabinet approach to thinking and give him room to do the things he said he will do. A husband, on the other hand, should be sensitive to the way his wife's mind works and try to respond in as timely a manner as possible. This involves a fair amount of give and take on both sides. Number 9. A woman's home is an extension of her personality. A man's job is an extension of his personality. It is easy for a woman to get wrapped up in her home and her husband not understand why. For a man to get caught up in his work and his wife be just as puzzled. A woman can work for years and never become attached to her job. It is different with a man. His job becomes a part of him, a part of his self-identity. A man's career is an extension of his personality. A woman can detach herself from her job and immerse herself in her home. A man will often bring his job home with him, at least in his mind and attitude, if not physically. John's job is to him a symbol of his manhood, his self-worth, and his ability to provide for Sarah and their children. Sarah should be sensitive to this and careful never to berate or belittle John with regard to his work. If she criticizes his job or career choice, she is criticizing him. In the same way, a woman's home is an extension of her personality. Anything that touches a woman's home touches her because her home represents who she is and how she sees herself. That's why a woman normally is very sensitive about the condition and appearance of her home. Quite often, husbands do not adequately understand this. They do not fully appreciate how important the physical aspects of their residence are to their wives' sense of pride and self-esteem. When a woman talks about her house, she is talking about herself. If Sarah tells John they need new living room curtains, he needs to be sensitive to what she is really saying. The curtains may look fine to him, but Sarah may see things that he misses. For her sake, John needs to learn to see their house through her eyes and not just his own. Number 10, men can be nomadic. Women need security and roots. A woman needs to be constantly reassured that she is grounded and secure in her marriage relationship. She needs to be continually affirmed that she is the most important person in her husband's life. He needs to tell her regularly and often that he loves her. It's not enough for him to assume that she knows this. She needs to hear it. It's not that she does not believe or trust her husband. It's just that the way she is made. A man does not need the same kind of emotional stroking as a woman. Constant reassurance brings security. A man is like a camel in that he can take one drink and go for a long time. A woman is like the deer of Psalm 42:1 that pants for streams of water. She needs a drink more often. Because of their nomadic nature, men usually find it easier to be by themselves than women do. Wives often have trouble understanding that there are times when their husbands simply want to be alone for a while. If a wife is in the least bit insecure in her relationship with her husband, she may read this as rejection or as a sign that she no longer satisfies him. That's why he needs to be sensitive and careful to reassure her of his love through both his words and his actions. Constant reassurance brings security. Most men can pull up stakes and move around easily, but women need roots. They want to be settled. It's easy for a guy to just pick up and change, but it's not as easy for a woman because she is an emotional feeler and becomes more attached to places and things than a man does. With this in mind, a husband needs to be aware that he cannot simply get up and move without considering his wife's need for the security of settledness. Number 11. Women tend to be guilt prone. Men tend to be resentful. Because of her emotion-centered base, a woman is prone to blame herself and take responsibility for anything that goes wrong in a relationship, even if it is not really her fault. Sometimes she will even rehearse over and over in her head a list of reasons why she is to blame. Many women walk around every day under a cloud of guilt, and quite often they have placed themselves, and which is usually unjustified. When problems arise in their relationships, women tend to second guess themselves. What did I say to make him mad? What could I have done to keep us from fighting? Many times it is not the woman's fault at all, but she still has trouble accepting that. A man is different. When something goes wrong in a relationship, he will resent the woman or even another man before he will acknowledge his own responsibility. Many men will do almost anything to avoid carrying around a sense of personal guilt. They would rather lash out in anger than accept blame. These two responses are opposites and feed off of each other. A man will refuse to accept his guilt, while a woman will take upon herself even guilt that is not her own. She then becomes an object of the man's resentment and anger, an easy target for his spite as he acts out against the guilt that he refuses to bear. Married couples need to be very watchful and wary of these tendencies because they can destroy a relationship more quickly than almost anything else. Number 12. Men are stable and level off. Women are always changing. Once again, this difference between men and women is due to the specific chemical and hormonal balances in their bodies and the particular frame of reference, logical or emotional, from which they operate. Many men would say that few things aggravate them as much as a woman who is always changing her mind. Women, on the other hand, would argue that men often seem to be unfazed, even cold or callous, no matter what happens. This is primarily a difference in perspective. In general, a man can make a decision and stick with it, even to the point of stubbornness. A woman may tell him one thing and then a few minutes later say, "I've changed my mind." Neither trait is better or worse than the other. They merely reveal the different ways that men's and women's mental processes work. Suppose that John and Sarah are preparing to go to a banquet. John chooses his gray suit and puts it on. Now he waits as Sarah tries first her blue dress, then her red dress, then her lavender dress, and finally settles on the blue dress she tried on the first time. Like her home, Sarah Close make a personal statement. Everything has to be perfect. She has to look just right. All the while, John is fidgeting and thinking, choose something for Pete's sake and let's go. As long as his suit is clean and his tie is straight, he's fine. Stability and spontaneity both are important for a healthy and fulfilling relationship. Another way to look at this difference is to say that men are more stable or stolid while women are more spontaneous. Stability and spontaneity both are important for a healthy and fulfilling relationship. Stability provides a necessary grounding while spontaneity injects a healthy dose of adventure. Number 13. Women tend to become involved more easily and more quickly than men do. Men tend to stand back and evaluate before they get involved. Because they are emotionally centered, women are more apt than men to involve themselves quickly in a cause or movement or project. Women tend to lead with their hearts. They see a need to recognize a noble or worthy cause that touches their hearts, and off they go. Logic-driven men, however, lead with their minds and tend to hold themselves aloof and apart, carefully observing and evaluating before they commit themselves. Because of their logical focus, men tend to be skeptical and must analyze something from every direction before joining themselves to it. Although it may take a man longer to come around, once he makes a decision, he is every bit as committed as a woman. Men and women may travel by different roads, but eventually they arrive at the same destination. Reasons and emotion complement each other. Here again, the genius of God's design is revealed. Reasons and emotion complement each other. Together they bring completeness to life and faith. Logic without passion is dry, austere, and lifeless. Passion without logic lacks order and stability. Married couples who understand and appreciate the interconnectedness of logic and emotion have a much higher probability of building a stable marriage characterized by strength, love, and a passionate zest for life. Number 14. Men need to be told again and again. Women never forget. A man's mind is like a filing cabinet. Anything spoken to him, he files away for later retrieval. Just because he doesn't act on it immediately does not mean he has forgotten or ignored what he was told. He has simply filed it away. That's why it is so often seems as though a man needs to be told or reminded again and again. A woman's mind is like a computer that never forgets anything, but keeps it ready for immediate recall on demand. Women never forget anything they say to a man or anything that a man says to them, and they also make sure that he doesn't forget. Either of these qualities may be negative or positive depending on the situation. Because they tend to receive things impersonally, men are more apt to overlook or forget disparaging comments made by them or to them. Generally, men are less prone to hold a grudge. However, on the negative side, this forgetfulness can cause men to become terribly insensitive and unresponsive to the needs of their wives and children. Because a woman receives everything emotionally and holds words and feelings close to her heart, she is naturally more sensitive and responsive to the needs she sees around her. On the downside, a woman's tendency to remember everything and take everything personally can cause her to allow a hurt or an insult or an offense to fester and grow for weeks, months, and even years, creating continual stress, anger, and headache. How can husbands and wives deal with these differences effectively in their relationships? Husbands must be careful what they say and how they say it. Remembering the wise counsel of the book of Proverbs, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. Wives should temper their remembering with grace, in accordance with the word of Paul. Love is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. 1 Corinthians 13:5b. Number 15. Men tend to remember the gist of things rather than the details. Women tend to remember the details and sometimes distort the gist. This is akin to the old he said, she said controversy. Men tend to remember conversations or events in general overview, while women recall specific details with laser-like precision. Women sometimes accuse men of hedging on what they said they would do, when in reality the men simply cannot recall the specifics of the conversation. Men are clear on the gist of what was said, but the details are less important. Women are sharp on the details, but sometimes not as clear in remembering the gist. Both tendencies can distort the truth. Recalling the gist without the details is like trying to describe an elephant seen dimly in a fog. All I know is it was big. Fixating on the details is like four blindfolded people in a room trying to describe that same elephant from touch alone. One touches the leg, another the trunk, the third the tail, and the fourth an ear. Their descriptions will be quite different from each other. This difference in the manner of recall between men and women is one of the most basic causes for communication problems between them. Sarah reminds John of a previous conversation, and he admits, "Yes, I think I did say something like that." "No," Sarah replies, "that is exactly what you said." "Well, that's not what I meant." "Maybe not, but that's what you said." John remembers the gist of the conversation and Sarah remembers the specifics. This kind of communication confusion is summed up pretty well in the statement, "I know you think you understand what you thought I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant." As always, patience and understanding go a long way in relieving the tension and stress created by the natural differences that distinguish men and women and the way they think. A common complaint in male-female relationship problem is, "You just don't understand me," or in other words, "You want me to be just like you." That is simply not the way things are, and we should not wish it otherwise. Men and women are different, and thank God that they are. A husband should not expect or desire his wife to start thinking in the logical and analytical centered way he does. Likewise, a wife should not look to her husband to see things through her emotional framework. Both should learn to value and celebrate the vital differences that God has built into each gender of the creature called man. Look how those differences complement each other. A world of logic without feeling would be a world populated by mindless and heartless computers. God did not create computers. He created man, male and female, and endowed them with all the varied and complementary qualities that are necessary for rich and full living. Men and women are not the same, and for good reason. Celebrate the difference. Viva La Difference principles. Number 1. A man is a logical thinker while a woman is an emotional feeler. Number 2. For a woman, language spoken is an expression of what she is feeling. For a man, language spoken is an expression of what he is thinking. Number 3. Language that is heard by a woman is an emotional experience. Language that is heard by a man is the receiving of information. Number 4. Women tend to take everything personally. Men tend to take everything impersonally. Number 5. Women are interested in the details, the nitty-gritty. Men are interested in the principle, the abstract, or the philosophy. Number 6. In material things, women tend to look at goals only. Men want to know the details of how to get there. Number 7. In spiritual or intangible things, men look at goals. Women want to know how to get there. Number 8. A man's mind is like a filing cabinet. A woman's mind is like a computer. Number 9. A woman's home is an extension of her personality. A man's job is an extension of his personality. Number 10. Men can be nomadic. Women need security and roots. Number 11. Women tend to be guilt-prone. Men tend to be resentful. Number 12. Men are stable and level off. Women are always changing. Number 13. Women tend to become involved more easily and more quickly than men do. Men tend to stand back and evaluate before they get involved. Number 14. Men need to be told again and again. Women never forget. Number 15. Men tend to remember the gist of things rather than the details. Women tend to remember the details and sometimes distort the gist. Wow, now that was good news. Our differences aren't obstacles, they're opportunities for growth and deeper connection. Let's unpack the reflections from chapter 7 to better appreciate how God designed us to complement each other. One of the most powerful ideas in this chapter is that men and women are designed to be different. And that's something to celebrate, not resist. Dr. Munroe explains that much of the tension in male-female relationships comes from trying to make the other person think or act like us. Instead, we're called to value and embrace the difference that God intentionally built into us. Here are some of the key principles that stood out to me. Number 1, how men and women process information. Men are logical thinkers. Women are emotional feelers. A man's language reflects what he is thinking, while a woman's language reflects what she's feeling. This difference is one of the greatest sources of misunderstanding, but also one of the most beautiful opportunities for growth. Number 2, language is received differently. When a woman hears language, it becomes an emotional experience. For a man, it's about receiving information. This is why women tend to remember the details and the emotional context, while men often focus on the bigger picture or the gist of things. Number 3, security versus exploration. Men are often nomadic by nature, always looking outward, while women crave security and roots. These tendencies complement one another when understood and embraced. Number 4, memory and repetition. Ladies, how many times have you had to remind your husband of something, only to feel like it went in one ear and out the other? That's because men tend to forget details, but remember the big picture. On the flip side, women rarely forget anything, so tread carefully. Number 5, value the differences. Dr. Munroe encourages us not to expect our spouse to think, feel, or act the same way we do. Instead, we should learn to value these differences as strengths that enrich our relationships. Viva La Difference principles. Number 1, a man is a logical thinker, a woman is an emotional feeler. Number 2, a woman's spoken language reflects her feelings. A man's reflects his thoughts. Number 3, language heard by a woman is an emotional experience. For a man, it's information received. Number 4, women tend to take things personally. Men tend to take things impersonally. Number 5, women focus on details. Men focus on abstract or the big picture. Number 6, in material things, women focus on goals. Men focus on the process. In spiritual things, in spiritual matters, men focus on goals. Women focus on the journey. Number 8, a man's mind is like a filing cabinet. A woman's mind is like a computer. Number 9, a woman's home is an extension of her personality. A man's job is an extension of his personality. Number 10, men can be nomadic. Women need security and roots. Number 11, women tend to be guilt prone. Men tend to be resentful. Number 12, men are stable and level off. Women are always changing. Number 13, women get involved quickly. Men stand back and evaluate. Number 14, men need repetition. Women never forget. And number 15, men remember for the gist. Women remember for the details. Here's a question from one of the listeners. Hi, I'm Alicia. My husband and I love each other deeply, but we struggle with communication. I feel like he doesn't listen to me, and he says I overwhelm him with details. How can we bridge this gap? Alicia, this is such a common challenge. Dr. Munroe reminds us that men and women are wired differently, and understanding those differences is the first step to building better communication. Try focusing on how you express yourself. Keep your points concise for him, and he can work on being more emotionally present for you. Both of you should embrace the differences as complementary rather than conflicting. This week, take time to reflect on how you and your spouse or loved ones process thoughts and feelings differently. Practice communicating in a way that honors the other person's design. For instance, women can focus on sharing the gist of things with men, and men can work on validating women's feelings by listening fully before responding. An affirmation. Repeat this affirmation with me. I celebrate the differences between myself and others. These differences are God's design, making us stronger together. I'm going to repeat it. I celebrate the differences between myself and others. These differences are God's design, making us stronger together. Let this affirmation guide your interactions this week. And for our meditation, close your eyes and picture a beautiful woven tapestry. Each thread unique in color and texture. These threads represents the difference between men and women. Together, they create a masterpiece of unity and strength. Ask God to help you honor and celebrate these differences in your relationships. Before we continue, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, All That and More Hair Salon. They specialize in restoring confidence and beauty for clients experiencing hair loss. With private consultations and custom wigs, they provide compassionate care and expert support. Visit bit.ly/MATM hair. That's bit.ly/ATMHAIR to book your consultation. With All That and More, you'll experience expert care and a renewed sense of self. Next week, we'll dive into Chapter 8, Friendship, the highest relationship of all. We'll explore why friendship is the foundation of every great marriage. You don't want to miss it. Are you ready to embrace and celebrate the differences in your relationships? Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's episode. Let's grow stronger together. This is Queen Rakihealya reminding you to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness and live with intention. You are wonderfully and deeply loved. Stay blessed and in his presence. You have been listening to Get Married Whole, your coach in a box. Tune in for the next episode.